Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We will begin our webinar in just a few moments. Today we have Jake Hostetler from Netronic, and he will be talking to us today about the 4 secrets of visual scheduling in Microsoft Dynamics NAV. If anyone has any questions during the webinar, you can type them into the questions box and we will discuss them at the end of the webinar. And this webinar will be recorded and posted to our website by the end of the day. I will now turn it over to Jake so we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. And yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for being here today. Like Angie already said, we're going to be talking about the 4 secrets of visual scheduling, how that brings transparency, punctuality, agility, and then overall quality. So yeah, without any further ado, let me skip ahead. So my name is Jake. We'll do questions at the end. I work as International Channel Account Manager at Netronic, based in Aachen, Germany. So it's, I think, before afternoon, where if you're on the East Coast or Central Time, and here it's 5 in the afternoon. So about 6, 7, 8 hours time difference, depending on where you are in the States or anywhere else in the world. Basically, I really like to help work with our international partners to build successful partnerships, and beyond that, work with the end customers to kind of bring additional value via visual scheduling. What we're going to do is just do a very brief introduction. The entire webinar itself probably will be about 25, 30 minutes maximum. So should be short but packed full of valuable information. We'll go through each of the secrets and we'll do a wrap-up. And there will be, of course, live demos. So I'll work through the visual scheduling tools as I'm explaining these secrets of visual scheduling. Okay, so just some background. If you aren't familiar with our visual scheduling suite, we have 3 unique products which make up the suite. We have the Visual Production Scheduler, which focuses on optimizing and scheduling production orders, order lines, operations, and capacities within your manufacturing module of NAV. We have the Visual Jobs Scheduler, which will look at of course, your job cards in NAV, your job tasks, and then your underlying job planning lines and resource allocations. And finally, and this is kind of going in the timeline that they were created, so the youngest of this family would be the Visual Service Scheduler. And then you're looking at a visual dispatch board where you can see your service orders, service item lines, allocations, and resources. So we're going to see all 3 of these in the demo today. So we'll look at the secrets, and the secrets kind of transcend the suite itself in that they can correspond to any one of these products. So the topics we talk about are going to be general, but we're going to be diving into them in each one of the products specifically, and you'll see what I mean in just a minute. So just some real quick facts and stats. Q1 of 2013 was when we launched the first product, which was the Visual Production Scheduler. We're the only ISV which is working with 3 dedicated products. Like I said, we have production jobs and services corresponding to those modules in NAV. And yeah, we've been part of almost 100 customer integrations worldwide. So quite a few companies utilizing our visual schedulers within NAV all over the globe. And yeah, these are really truly integrated add-ins, and I'm not going to go too much in detail with that just because we're going to be talking about it a lot today. So let's move on. Secret 1, no altering, just bolstering, excuse me. So the goal here is to make visual scheduling seamless, and there's an apprehension a lot of times to try something new. And visual scheduling, when you look at a visual schedule of your data, first of all, data in NAV can be extremely complex, and it is overwhelming at times to try to view that in a tabular format, and it can even be overwhelming when you try to view that in a visual format, depending on how you look at it. So what we're trying to do is provide an add-in, as this is really reducing the amount of footprint or imprint we have on Dynamics NAV. We're not changing any of your underlying NAV data. We're taking the data that's living in NAV. If it's manufacturing, it's your production orders. If it's jobs, it's your job cards and your underlying job task lines and job planning lines. And if it's services, we're just giving you a visual front end to your visual dispatch board. So, like I said, really we're trying to minimize the amount of impact we're having in NAV, which means that the go live of this software can be done in easily less than half a day, which is a huge benefit compared to other systems, maybe an APS system, which is advanced planning system, where it'll take you weeks and you'll spend thousands of dollars just to get trained on the system, which you're not even sure if it will work or not. What we're trying to accomplish here is really to allow you to see the forest for all the trees, allow you to see and view the most relevant data very quickly and easily, but while maintaining the, I guess I will use the word, maybe the power or the influence that the planner has over the data. So not giving complete control over to an algorithm or to a scheduling system. Okay, so just to demonstrate this no altering, just bolstering, I wanted to jump in to my visual production scheduler. So I've switched now into my NAV homepage, and this role center I'm sure you guys will be familiar with if you're familiar with NAV. If not, this is the NAV role center. And what I'm going to do is, from a navigational standpoint, I'm going to show you guys what this would look like. So I'm going to move down here to departments. I'm going to maneuver here to manufacturing. Okay, and under manufacturing, this kind of is showing that living and breathing within NAV. You can see here, within manufacturing, we're going to have released, we're going to have planned, firm planned, and released production orders. And it's these production orders that we're going to be visualizing in NAV. So just to reiterate once again, and I don't want to kill it too much, but the fact is we're just taking this information in NAV and showing it in the scheduler. So let's go in here to planning, down here to the visual production scheduler, which is listed as a list item. I'm going to click on that, and what's going to happen is it's going to open up a standard NAV page, which is broken down into 3 parts. So you can see I have my role center on the left, which I can minimize as I'm working in the scheduler at the moment. I have a menu ribbon across the top, which has icons specific to the visual production scheduler, but this is also a standard NAV menu ribbon, meaning that you can customize the ribbon to just like you could on any page in NAV. And then the main portion of the screen is going to be our interactive Gantt chart. And you can see what we saw in the execution submodule of manufacturing. We see we have our planned, which are grouped and color-coded according to this status. Here at the top, we have our firm planned and we have our released. Okay. And just to give us a sense of that no altering, just bolstering, what you're seeing on the Gantt chart is exactly what's being pulled from NAV. So we see we have in these production orders, in production order 10, 10, 04, 10,000, we see our work centers and our machine centers. You can see these blocks with these lines connecting them will actually be your routing. And just to show this, let me just double click here. And as I double click on any of these operations, what's going to happen? It's going to open up the corresponding card in NAV. Okay, so this is all familiar to you. Once you've been trained in manufacturing in NAV, you're going to be able to go right into your routing. All standard. Everything you're seeing here is what we're showing in the scheduler, the setup time and the runtime, which operation on which work center or machine center, starting date and ending date and time. And the same thing will happen here. So as I scroll across the screen, you can see at the bottom that I'm also not only showing the timing around this production order. So I'm not only showing when this operation 10 is beginning and ending, okay, then it goes to operation 20, 30, 40, 50, but I'm also showing at the bottom of the screen, for example, I'm showing the total capacity on the work or machine center where this is taking place. So in this case, I'm at the drilling machine. I can see that the drilling machine has a daily capacity of 1, and I can see at the bottom of the screen also that I can see where that capacity is being utilized, but I can also see where that capacity is being exceeded at certain points. Okay, so here at operation, or if you look at the bottom left of my screen, you can see that there's a red overload occurring at some point earlier in the schedule on this drilling machine. So I can't see this necessarily in this view, what the conflict is or how to solve that necessarily. But what I can do now is switch over into what's called my resource view. And what my resource view allows me to do is view the same schedule that I was looking at before, but now we have on the left-hand side, we have our work centers and our machine centers, and now we see on which production orders and which production order operations they're working inside the Gantt chart. This means that when I see that I have now a work overload on a certain resource, I'm now able to identify which operations are conflicting with one another, and I could then choose based off of my knowledge, and this is where the planner still has the control over the NAV data, to then shift a certain type of data around, so then shift it this way. And I can adjust an operation to an alternative machine center based off of the capacity that's available at that given machine center. Alternatively, I could adjust the timing around one of these operations to be an earlier or a later time in the schedule. So this is really giving you the transparency that we talked about, and this is really where that no altering, just bolstering comes in. So we'll talk about this more as we go through the rest of the presentation. But let me just come back here to my slides for a second. All right, so we had a look. So moving into secret 2, we're going standard, but we're being specific. So like we keep saying, we're using the standard data, but the goal here and what visual scheduling allows you to achieve is to take very large amounts of data and filter it down or shrink it to a size that is relevant for you at a given time. So a lot of times you can get lost in a large amount of data, and it can be very difficult to kind of sift through and work with only the most relevant data at that time. And eventually you'll be able to deal with it in some way, but generally speaking, it will slow you down tremendously. So visual scheduling allows you to have an overview that would otherwise be impossible in a tabular form. And let's look at that now with the visual service scheduler. Come back here to departments. So I'm just moving now from manufacturing down into services, into planning and dispatching. And what we're looking at with the visual service scheduler, again, is a visual dispatch board. So with service scheduling, there's basically 2 pieces to the dispatching. Well, there's the creation of a service order. Okay, so maybe you have a technician that needs to go out and maintenance something. First, you need a customer calls and says, hey, this machine or whatever has broken down. We need a service tech to come out and take a look at it. So there's going to be the creation of that service order, and then you need, as the planner, to assign that service order out to a resource, so to allocate it out to your resources. So it's a 2-step process. And you can see this directly reflected in the visual scheduler, the visual service scheduler, the VSS. So again, I'm opening up a standard NAV page. And now you can see it's similar in its layout, but different in some ways. So here we have on the left-hand side, we have our resources, which are taken from resource planning. And then I can see along this right horizontal axis, something I didn't totally explain in our previous with the visual production scheduler, but we have our time scale. So this is the total amount of time that we're looking at. So this is why I can drag to the left, to the right. Left would be moving backwards, so essentially into the past. It's all based off of a working date we have here, which is set by you and NAV. Anything to the right is what's coming up in the schedule. And then you can see which service orders have already been allocated out to given resources. And I can see which service orders are still in my order backlog, which is what we're calling it here. And this order backlog is set based off of priority. Okay, so when we talk about being specific within the standard data, this is all standard data in NAV. But what this view and what this visual scheduling graphical chart provides you is a complete overview across your resources, their utilization, and who's working on what at which time. And this would be very, very difficult to see or work with in a tabular format to gain such a visual overview. So this transparency is what I'm getting at. And you can see here that I have my groups here as well. So what this allows me to do is look at the overall group level. I can see the group capacity at the bottom. So we're going to take the aggregate of the underlying resources. So that being that if I have 4 resources, each one having a daily capacity of 8 hours, you can see that under my electricians group, I have a daily capacity of 32 hours. So it allows me to look at my resource capacity from a group level, which I can then I can say, okay, I know this work needs to be allocated out to electricians at some point. However, I don't yet know which electricians are necessarily going to work on that service order. So what I can do is I can first assign it to the group level, which you can see has been done here with 12 hours, and then I can choose to drag this down to a given resource, maybe Alan Jacobson. Now it's been assigned to Alan Jacobson. You can see it's still ahead of its due date because these black lines leading up to this downward facing triangle, this arrow, these are showing us our due dates. If I were to move this beyond the due date, okay, it would turn red, and we can see that would indicate that it would be late. But let's move back here just for a moment. Okay, so now let's say I moved it down to Alan Jacobson. Let's say, however, that I want to split this across multiple resources. I see that I have, for example, I have time at Alan Jacobson, but let's say, okay, I could theoretically get this done because I see Paul Little has time on that day as well. Paul Little can accommodate that work also. So what I can do is I can actually take this 12-hour service order line and I can split it. So I'm going to split the allocation, which gives me these 2 6 hours. And then what I can do is I can actually drag this down onto Paul Little, assign it to him on the same day. And then I can certainly, within that day, I can move it around to see exactly when he'll start on that. So if I wanted to do it before lunch or from 6 to noon, I could do that. So this allows you within the schedule to take your standard data, but be very specific in how you're working with it, and be very flexible and adaptable to changing things very quickly. And now let's just see real quick what I can do as far as just dragging and dropping from the order backlog. So allocating a service order out to a resource is just as easy as what I just did with splitting. I see here I have my customer D-Field Graphics company has a computer highline package service order line that needs to be allocated out to someone. So let's say I wanted to allocate this out to Steve Johnson. I'm just going to grab that box, the highline package. I'm going to drag it into Steve Johnson's free capacity here. And you can see now it's disappeared from over here. It's appeared here under Steve Johnson for that allocated 4 hours. And then again, I can extend the time he's going to work on it. Okay, I can shift this around. So now I've just increased it to an 8-hour allocation that's going to take him the entirety of Wednesday. And again, it's the same data, but you're allowing yourself now the flexibility and the specificity to kind of be able to shift it around very quickly and ultimately gain increased operational agility. All right, so it's a little bit about secret 2. Let's move here into secret 3, which once you've started working with scheduling, you can kind of work with what we call scheduling hacks. So we know that NAV is powerful, and it's a very, very good system at working with large amounts of data and being adaptable and being customizable. These are facts. But it can, of course, be cumbersome, and that's why we have visual scheduling to help us to, like we said earlier, to create an agility that would otherwise not be present. So what we'll look at now, we'll look at our visual job scheduler to see how we can use visual scheduling to not only gain more specificity with our standard NAV data, and not only bolster our NAV data, but also enhance on what we're working with. So when we talk about scheduling hacks, let's see if I can come back here. I'm going to move down here. So first we were in manufacturing. We looked at the visual production scheduler. Then we moved down here to the visual service scheduler, where we looked at allocating service orders into a visual dispatch board with resources. And we're going to keep those same resources, but now we're shifting up into jobs. So I've just moved into my jobs module, and I'm going to move in here to my visual job scheduler, which is living under jobs in the list as a list item. So I have a filter set up just in case I wanted to filter on any given or any certain jobs. I can also take that filter away. So currently I'm pulling in all of my current jobs that I have living in NAV. All right, so very similar screen to what we've been seeing. We can see that I have these big, thick blue lines at the moment, and this is showing us our overall job lines. So all these jobs are currently quoted. You can see that I have some information that are provided on the job line already, including job number, percent completed, status, so on and so forth. And you can certainly add or deduct the amount of information shown on these lines.
Jake, we lost your audio.
Card. I can see here that I have my underlying job tasks that are making up this overall job. Okay, so this is standard job card in NAV. So this is exactly what we're seeing in the visual job scheduler. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the job here. So as I'm expanding down, you can see that those foundational stones, those tasks and underlying job planning lines are what are made up here in the visual job scheduler. It's being directly one-to-one visually front-ended. So now I'm going to just do something called create a link, and this is one of those scheduling hacks that I was talking about. So I can see that I can move either the entire job together. I can move, and you'll see everything underneath the job is going to move with it. And however, what I can also do with this creation of a dependency is I can move individual job task lines, which will then automatically push out the task line behind it. So what I've now done is something that doesn't actually exist in the standard NAV, which is to create a dependency between these job task lines, which says when I push out, in this case, the kickoff, the project plan cannot begin until the kickoff is finished. So the more I push this out, the more the project plan is also going to be pushed out, because now I've established a relationship where this needs to finish before this one starts. And we can see the same kind of scheduling hack if I move here to the resource view, in which case I'm seeing all of my resources and what they're working on at a given time. So I see my resource group and I see underlying resources. And now what I'm actually able to do now is work with what's called unassigned resources, which in this case I have unassigned resources in my project manager, my electricians, and my hardware engineers groups. Okay, and what I can now do is I can first allocate out to the group level on the unassigned group. So again, this is kind of similar to what we talked about in service scheduling. If I know that I have work that needs to be done for a certain group, I can first allocate it to that group before I decide to assign it to any specific or given resource. And then at a later time, when I know exactly which resource might work on that, I can come in here and I can drop it down to that given resource. So these are things that would be unavailable if you're working without the visual scheduling. We're not changing any underlying pieces of NAV, but via visual scheduling, you're actually enhancing your scheduling capabilities in NAV. So this is what we mean by scheduling hacks. All right, and there are many more throughout not just the job scheduler, but services in production as well. And there are certainly more videos on our website if you want to check those out, or we can ask any questions at the end. So let me just move back here. All right. So finally, secret 4, walk before you run. So it's no doubt that what we're talking about today is complicated. And the main goal here is to really try to use a visual front end to better understand complex, and not only complex, but quantitatively large amounts of data. And to add to that, and to add to the fact that we keep saying we're adding to the standard, it's also really important to note that we do work outside of the standard at times. So beyond just enhancing the standard products, we understand that there are customizations that are made to NAV, to a certain business process, to a certain industry, to a certain type of work that often comes up. And we have the ability to heavily customize depending on what the needs are. And we're pretty much always in a state of working with multiple customers on customizing the scheduler to fit the specific needs they have. So we've done it with rental schedulers. We've built interfaces on the visual job scheduler for various solutions. We've adjusted the actual tree chart and the service scheduler, so we can either do the service scheduling by prioritization of service orders. You can also do it by location, for example. We've done that. There's mapping to custom fields in NAV. There's a project planner we've built for an ISV solution. So if you have a solution that doesn't necessarily, if it isn't one-to-one the jobs module in NAV, you're happy to build. We've built visual schedulers that are specific to kind of homegrown solutions or non-standard NAV solutions, and can adjust our schedulers to fit directly into a unique NAV system of an end customer. So just to recap, no altering, just bolstering. We looked at the visual production scheduler where we saw that you could jump right back and forth between NAV and the visual scheduler because it is fully integrated, living and breathing inside NAV.
Jake, we lost you again.
Assign first to the resource group, and then at a later time go in and drop tasks down to individual resources. And then finally, walking before you can run. It's important to note that, of course, we stick to the standard with our standard branch of products. However, are constantly creating customized products to fit the needs of end customers with NAV. So that being said, thank you guys very much for the time today. Kept it pretty much close to the 25-30 minute mark. So yeah, we can do any questions at the end. If you have any other questions, I left my contact info here. You can reach out to any of my colleagues at Innovia or visit us at www.netronic.com. But thank you very much for the time today.
All right, great. Thank you, Jake, very much for that informative information. Like I said earlier, we will have the recording of this on our website by the end of the day. That is innovia.com. And if anyone has any questions, we can go ahead and discuss those. All right. Well, thank you all very much for attending, and we look forward to the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.